Where's Rocky?
He's right there. So let's talk about the kitchen, which is behind me there. Same. Before everything got like put in, we took our measurements, and because I had an AC unit, we kind of had to build everything. So after I saw how it was gonna fit, you know, figuring out how much space, like a walkway I would need between,
Put on high.
keep sneezing,
Set up
to get in and out of the van right there. And oh my gosh, I've been staring at the monitor the entire time. So the kitchen it consists of my fridge. Underneath everything is the AC, which we had to build everything around. And then a sink, a little 15 by 15 bar sink, my Dometic stove / oven combo thing. And then underneath that is another little storage drawer for my pots and pans and cups and bowls and all that stuff. And I think it only runs around 43 inches wide and like 25 inches deep.
Overall depth is 21 3/4.
We only had so much space, and so I wanted to figure out how it was all gonna look in the very beginning. And that's why I whipped together a really crappy frame out of the 2x2s we were using to frame the rest of the van. I quickly just put it together one evening to see how the oven was gonna fit next to the sink over the AC, and how much counter space I was gonna have. A lot of space taken up, boom, gone. Really closes off this area. I'm basically just gonna have a runway. It seemed to have enough space so that we have enough walking room in the hall between the kitchenette and the bathroom and the couch, and then also an exit area like this, where you go in and out of the van. What are you doing, Rock? Once I had that, I had to move out of my house that I was living in, and I went home to my dad's place to then build out the remainder of the van. During that time, Greg came over and whipped together a kitchenette out of scrap cabinets that he had at his shop. That's what he does for a living. He puts together kitchens by Gregory. And that was something that's like a huge help. You know, I don't have all the tools, or I didn't have all the tools to be cutting together a kitchenette, and I also didn't have any of the materials. Greg's out here Frankensteining cabinets apart, and
What do you think of that so far?
that looks good.
Some process of elimination.
We're still working. I think it's around like 5:30, and my dad quit and went to mow the lawn. But thankfully his friends are still working, kicking ass with me.
Stove is 20 and a half. Here's my cutout.
That looks cool. So it's 8 p.m. The storm is on its way in. I don't know if you're gonna be able to see any lightning. Boom, saw it there. And we've got a lot done today, actually. This came in. Got a sink in. No plumbing ran to it. And countertop, that's where the stove's gonna go. It's looking pretty good. He had a old countertop from a job that he did a couple months back, and put that on there, cut a hole for the sink, cut a little space for the oven, and we got it in place, and that's all it was. I didn't have running water. I didn't have like the propane hooked up, so no gas to run the oven / stove. It was just there because I needed to get that stuff like out of the way while I lived in it, so it wasn't just sitting on the floor.
That's a nice 1/4 inch.
Where are we going now?
I'm still going. I'm just checking my notes.
Okay, I'm gonna blow my nose.
Okay. After I had been living in it a couple months, which is really difficult to continue to work on a van while you're living in it, we finally got back to the kitchen after we had like the gas ran to the oven/stove and the water ran to the sink and some plumbing ran for the gray water to go out to a holding tank and da-da-da-da-da. All that stuff was done, and we finally got back in there, and by that time we had the flooring in, and we discovered that the fridge, we like installed the bamboo flooring underneath the fridge that didn't want to sit still while I was driving. So there was a couple times when I was driving and then I would come to a stop and the fridge would just slide forward to the front of the van. So my dad whipped together this little bracket that we then screwed in to hold the fridge in place, because that's the thing, things move around and you have to be able to stabilize them, keep them in place while you're driving. So
This is to keep the refrigerator from sliding out while in transit. And what it does, it's gonna get screwed up to there and hold back on the refrigerator.
how's this
I'll
go?
hold
This
it up.
way?
Yeah,
or the other
yeah,
way?
no, just like that. Talking and cursing and...
That's the best part. Then it's like a cut to you as like comedic relief.
Oh, you're talking
and then...
to me right now, I don't even realize that's what's so funny.
One of the first things, one of the other things we kind of like jumped on with the kitchen was that cabinet that I have above it. So what's this cabinet from? So the cabinet is up, which looks pretty crazy right now, but we're gonna like put a face on it so it doesn't look as nutty. But for now, it's up, it works. I can put my food up there. And finally have these lights mounted. So now it's time to install one of these little
over here so it's out of the way on this side.
door pistons. I filmed Greg talking about it so he can kind of dive a little more into detail. Was that originally a wall cabinet or no?
Yeah, it was.
It was?
A wall cabinet that hung vertically.
Like a bathroom one?
Right.
Because there's a mirror on it, or?
That's where it came out of, yeah. 12-inch wide, 30-inch long cabinet.
Remember we put it and it had like a slant to it and you could see it, and so you put this
There's a cap
edge
over
on
it
it.
and also used
and
this
then a cap.
bottom piece so that we'd have a place to put our lights underneath there.
Yeah, and the wires literally just ran up underneath this. So there's a gap in there between the actual cabinet and this bottom plate where we mounted these two and ran our wires, and then they went through here. That backboard that I ended up painting with chalk paint is kind of pointless. I had thought like, oh, I can put little notes in there and grocery list and da-da-da-da-da. The outlet's not in the best spot. In my mind, I was like, well, I kind of make these smoothies in the morning. That would be a nice spot to plug in a blender. I don't know where else I would have put it, honestly, with the amount of space I had. So it's not in the greatest spot, but I didn't have a ton of options. I'm sure someone will be like, well, what? I don't know. And then I think the last big thing with the kitchenette that I wanted was a skateboard countertop. Now, if you've watched the dining room build, you'll know that I went to a gentleman named Guy, who's a woodworker in the Indianapolis area, who's actually pretty popular on YouTube and Instagram. He whipped together my dining table. And when he was doing that, he was like, this was really difficult, I don't want to do this. I had to figure out a way to make this skateboard countertop happen. And, you know, I had done some research, and you see, you know, people glue all these boards together, and then they take a bandsaw and they rip through them to make little slabs of colored wood, like strips, and then they glue them together to make something or carve them out. I decided to go over to my buddy Thomas's place, and he has a little woodworking shop in his garage, a lot cleaner than Joe's garage. That's why I went over there. And I had cleaned a bunch of boards off, which you've should have seen from the previous video, the dining room table of me cleaning the boards off. You gotta rip the grip tape off and like get the graphics off and blah, 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 blah. Thomas's daughter actually came out and helped us a little bit too. We ended up gluing them all together and clamping them down. And I was like, okay, hopefully this works. They're all looking real tight together. It seems like it's gonna work. And then when I came back the next day, some layers were just kind of popping apart. And I was immediately like, oh, this is never gonna work, you know? But then I realized it was only on the ones where I didn't sand off the finish on the tops of the board where you stick your grip tape. So like it wasn't wood on wood, there was a finish that it was attaching to and then it kept popping off. And then you could see like the glue, it doesn't want to hold to it. A few weeks later, when I finally go back to Greg's to do this countertop, I then sanded everything down. Both sides, I just took a grinder with a sanding wheel and just took it all off so that it was to the bare wood of the board. And then by that time it was like, do we need to glue these together or can we just cut these into small pieces and then glue them together? So we started to do small strips and we were cutting them into 3/4 inch strips, and then we were gonna glue them all together to make this countertop.
Is that it to scale drawing?
We're gonna be building off of this, which is 3/4, 3/4, and then add another 3/4. Is this the size?
Yeah, this is your top.
Same brand.
So we can go
Same
with this?
kind. Go for it. And then while I was gone for a week, Greg actually glued the rest of it together. So when I came back, he had it done, sanded it all down, and it looked like awesome. It worked out. I think it worked out. We put a finish coat on it, and then we literally just took that and stuck it directly down on top of the countertop that I had there. That was our base, our mounting piece. To adhere it to the countertop that we had already in place, we just used some wood glue and little pin nails to like hide where we were attaching things. They're so small that you could barely see them, and if you put them in the colorful pieces of the wood, they kind of just like blend in. And then it made the countertop 1.5 inches thick, which is kind of standard. And then he went and took and put some finishing like trim on the edges of it. He has a special name for that. And then to like round it all out, we added a little flip up countertop extension, which was just like a butcher block cutting board type deal that Greg had sitting in his shop. And I had bought these little flip up brackets to attach it to, and Greg and I took a measurement of that to like show what it did to extend the countertop.
Now you have an overall of 55.5.
It's a nice little addition to have. It does rattle while we drive. That's kind of a pain, but it is nice to have when I cook. I can make a mess on it and not really care. I'd rather keep the skateboard countertop clean, even though Archer eats up there and makes a mess of it anyways. But yeah, that's the whole thing. And I guess, yeah, that was it. I mean, later down the line, my mom and I added a little bit of flair to it. Like I said, we added a little air fern. What is that? Is that what it is? It's a fern. We put a magnetic strip that people put like their knives and stuff on, but I just use it to hook my coffee cups and stuff like that on it. And then added the fruit hammock, which is like essential, I guess, for most vans. I actually do use it a ton. I put like my onions and potatoes and fruit up there. And from the van tour video, I have now learned that you shouldn't put your apples and your bananas in the same spot because gases are emitted from the apples to ruin your bananas or vice versa, something like that. So now I don't do that. I just put the bananas up there with some veg. And that's it. I think that's it. Right? That's everything. Yeah, I'll link all the stuff that we had underneath. Like, subscribe, sub, bell. Yep. And that's it. Right? Yep. Done. I need to stare right at this. Okay, let's talk about the kitchen. I keep hearing you sneezing and have to restart.
No, wow, sorry.